I watched an episode of The Simpsons that doesn't exist, and it told me how I was going to die. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I've gone over this in my head 1,000 times. How to tell it, how to warn people, how to even begin explaining something that shouldn't exist at all. I keep thinking if I just bury it, if I try to forget, maybe it'll fade away like a bad dream. But it hasn't. It follows me. Every night. Every time I close my eyes. And if this video suddenly disappears, if you never hear from me again, you'll know why. You see, this isn't just another creepypasta about some lost episode. This isn't some made-up fan theory, or some forgotten file hidden in the archives of a cartoon studio. This episode is real. I watched it, and I swear on whatever time I have left, it's a death sentence. The Simpsons has always been safe, right? Harmless. Bright colors, silly voices, dumb jokes about donuts and beer. It's background noise for most people, childhood nostalgia for others. Hell, it was comfort for me. A cartoon you put on to forget about the world for a while. But what I saw twisted that comfort into something I can't erase. The same yellow faces, the same Springfield streets, but warped into a prophecy so personal, so exact, it tore my reality apart. I don't even know if I should be talking about this. Maybe I'm signing my own death warrant by putting it into words. But silence hasn't protected me. Deleting the file didn't protect me. Ignoring it only made the whispers louder, like the episode itself wanted me to share it, to drag others down with me. That's the part that keeps me awake, wondering if I'm cursed to spread it. If by listening, you've already seen too much. Maybe you think I'm lying. Maybe you think this is just another internet horror story, a desperate attempt for attention. I wish you were right. I wish I could close this file, laugh it off, and never look back. But I can't.
I can still hear the static in my ears, the way the characters looked straight at me through the screen, as if they weren't animated at all. And what they showed me, what they promised me. I can't get it out of my head. It started like any other night. I thought it was just another fan-uploaded episode. That's the truth of it. Nothing about the night screamed special or life-altering. It was just me, sitting at my desk, doing what I usually do when the rest of the world's asleep. Wasting time with old episodes of The Simpsons. It wasn't anything serious at first. Just background noise. You know how some people put on rain sounds or white noise to help them sleep? For me, it's Springfield. I've seen most of the episodes so many times I don't even have to look at the screen to know what's happening. The rhythm of Homer's dough, the rolling chuckle of Barney, the sarcastic bite of Lisa. It's like comfort food for the brain. I grew up on it. I had VHS tapes stacked like bricks on my shelf, all labeled in messy black marker. Treehouse of Horror 4. Bart Gets an Elephant. Homer Badman. Sometimes I'd rewind them until the static wore out the edges of the picture, but I didn't care. Each tape felt like a relic, a portal to something brighter, funnier, safer. As I got older, I never really grew out of it. I just evolved with it. I joined trivia forums, posted in fan groups, traded obscure facts with people who knew every frame of animation like it was scripture. I could tell you which couch gag belonged to which season, which animation studio handled which sequence, even which background characters were recycled. I'm not proud of it. It's not exactly the kind of thing you drop at parties unless you want people to edge away slowly. But for me it was routine, grounding. Sometimes I'd laugh at myself for it. Like, here I was, a fully grown adult, spending my nights debating whether or not Homer's middle initial actually stood for J. But that's the thing about obsessions. They don't feel like obsessions when they've been there your whole life. They just feel like part of you. And honestly, the show was safe. That's the word I keep circling back to. Safe. Even when it was edgy, it was harmless. Even when they made fun of death, or politics, or the apocalypse, it was all still wrapped in bright colors and punchlines. It never crossed the line. That's why parents let their kids watch it. That's why I trusted it. So when I came across that episode, when I saw the file that didn't belong, I didn't think twice. I'd already seen dozens of fan edits, bootlegs, even joke lost episodes people made to creep each other out. Half the time, they were just grainy copies of Treehouse of Horror sketches with bad titles slapped on. But this was different. I didn't know it yet, of course. To me, in that moment, it was just another curiosity. Another late-night discovery to shrug at before moving on. Still, something about the title caught my attention. Something about the way the file name didn't match any numbering I'd ever seen. The way it was buried in a folder where it shouldn't have been. It was like finding a brick out of place in a wall you've stared at your whole life. And if I had ignored it, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe I wouldn't be here right now, telling you this story. Then I stumbled across something that shouldn't have existed. There was no record of this episode anywhere, not even on the fan wikis. And if you know anything about the Simpsons fandom, you'll know that's impossible. These people catalog everything. I mean everything. Background posters, reused animations, even half-second frames that got cut in syndication. If an episode exists, it's online. If it doesn't, then it shouldn't exist at all. But that night, sitting in front of my computer, I stumbled on something I couldn't explain. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't advertised. It was hidden, tucked deep inside a thread on a dead forum I hadn't visited in years. I don't even know why I clicked on it. Maybe nostalgia, maybe boredom. But as I scrolled through old arguments about whether Homer's hairline had changed in season 7, I saw a username I didn't recognize, Watcher_Grin. No avatar, no profile picture, just one post. It was dated 5 years earlier, and it only contained a single link. Normally, I don't touch links like that. Anyone who spends time online knows you're basically begging for a virus. But this one was different. The subject line read, S23E0, a final goodbye. Season 23, Episode 0. I frowned. There were no episode zeros, and certainly not one called A Final Goodbye. At first, I thought it was just a fan title. A prank, maybe. But the link didn't lead to a YouTube upload or a torrent. It led to a simple directory, buried on some forgotten server, with one file inside, goodbye.mkv. Even weirder, the file size wasn't large enough for a full episode. It was just under 200 megabytes, tiny compared to the usual 20-minute runtime. That should have been my red flag. But instead, it hooked me. Why was it so small? Was it compressed? Was it incomplete? I downloaded it before I could talk myself out of it. The file took only seconds to appear on my desktop, and when it did, I noticed something unsettling. The creation date wasn't listed as the day I downloaded it. It was dated 10 years earlier, 2012, and yet, the directory had only been posted in 2017. I stared at the file for a long time, trying to convince myself this was just some elaborate fan project. But then I made a mistake. I opened the folder's metadata. Buried inside, under the description, was a single line, "For him." I slammed the window shut. For him? What the hell was that supposed to mean? I could have stopped there. Should have stopped there. But you know how your brain works when you're holding something that feels forbidden? Like an itch under your skin, daring you to scratch it. That's how it felt, staring at that file. It reminded me of the times I'd found old VHS tapes at yard sales when I was a kid. Boxes labeled in faded Sharpie, cartoons, recordings, miscellaneous. Half the time it was just Wheel of Fortune reruns, but once in a while you'd hit gold. A half-recorded episode of something rare, commercials still intact, grainy sound that made it feel special. That's what nostalgia whispered in my ear. Maybe this was one of those moments. A piece of treasure buried in static. But the deeper part of me knew better. Something about it felt wrong. I hovered over the file, my finger twitching on the mouse. I remember laughing nervously to myself, whispering, "Come on, it's just a cartoon. What's the worst that could happen?" That's what we always say, right? Right before things go bad. The icon blinked at me, waiting, daring me. Curiosity won. I pressed play. At first it looked almost normal, almost. The familiar clouds rolled in across the blue sky, parting just enough for the yellow letters of The Simpsons to appear. For a split second, I relaxed. That theme song, it's like Pavlov's bell for me. The trumpet notes, the sax riff, the playful rhythm. I'd heard it so many times it was almost like muscle memory. Nostalgia wrapped around me like a blanket, and I almost laughed at myself for being nervous. But then I noticed the colors. The sky wasn't quite right. Too pale, like it had been bleached by the sun. The blue had a sickly gray tint, and the clouds looked less like cartoons and more like smudges of chalk on a board that hadn't been cleaned properly. It was subtle, barely enough to notice if you weren't paying attention. But I was paying attention.
The letters appeared, but they weren't the cheerful, bouncy logo I knew. They lingered too long, vibrating slightly as though the animation had been corrupted. The music dragged, half a beat too slow, like the instruments were tired. I told myself it was just a bad rip, some glitch from the file compression. But then the intro kept going. The camera panned down to Springfield, But instead of the usual bustling, cartoon-bright town, the colors were muted. The grass wasn't green, it was a faded brown. The houses looked abandoned, windows dark, doors shut tight. No background characters filled the streets. No cars drove by. Springfield was empty. The couch gag began, but the timing was wrong. The family didn't rush in like they usually do. The living room was darker, shadows stretching across the floor, the couch more of a black silhouette than a prop. The characters shuffled in one by one. Homer, Marge, Lisa, Maggie. Only Bart never came. And yet the theme kept playing, cheerful and oblivious. When it cut to the chalkboard gag, I leaned closer, expecting the usual quick joke. But Bart wasn't writing anything funny. He stood there stiffly, chalk moving slowly across the board as though every word was heavy. I froze when I read the sentence. My name will die at midnight. At first, I thought I misread it. I blinked, leaned in, rubbed my eyes. But it didn't change. Over and over, Bart scrawled my name across the board. My actual name. The letters uneven, jagged, like a child had written them in anger. That's when I realized the chalkboard wasn't a joke. It was a warning. The laugh track didn't play. The usual rushed bell sound when Bart finishes didn't come. He just kept writing, slower and slower, until the screen cut to the couch gag. I tried to tell myself maybe it was coincidence. Maybe the file had pulled my name from somewhere on my computer, some freak glitch in the metadata. But my stomach was tight, my hands cold. Coincidence doesn't feel that personal.
The couch gag began, but the timing was wrong. The family didn't rush in like they usually do. The living room was darker, shadows stretching across the floor, the couch more of a black silhouette than a prop. The characters shuffled in one by one. Homer, Marge, Lisa, Maggie. Only Bart never came. Instead, the others sat silently, staring forward. Their eyes weren't the goofy round circles I remembered. They were black dots, wide and unblinking. No laughter, no quirky gag, just silence. The theme song stuttered, skipped, and then cut out completely. By now I was gripping my desk, so hard my knuckles ached. I thought about shutting it off, deleting the file right then. But I didn't, because part of me still wanted to believe it was some fan edit, some edgy parody made to creep people out. If I stopped watching, I'd never know. And the not knowing felt worse than the fear. So I stayed. The screen faded into the first scene. Homer was at the nuclear power plant, sitting at his station. But the machinery behind him wasn't humming, wasn't glowing. Everything was dead quiet. He stared at a blank monitor, expressionless, the faint hum of static the only sound. Then, as if on cue, the laugh track kicked in, but it was delayed, too loud, bursting in at the wrong time. The kind of laugh that wasn't cheerful at all, but forced mechanical. It went on just a beat too long, and then cut out sharply. Homer turned to the camera, just for a second. His eyes locked onto mine. I leaned back in my chair, heart hammering. That wasn't supposed to happen. Characters don't break the fourth wall. Not like that. The episode carried on as though nothing was wrong, but I knew. Something was broken here. Something was bleeding through. And then it got worse. They weren't acting anymore. They were watching me. That realization crept in slowly, like a chill through an open window. At first, I kept waiting for the punchline, for the rhythm of a normal Simpsons episode to fall into place. But it never came. Instead, the pacing dragged. Each scene stretched too thin, filled with silences that pressed down on me like dead air. Homer stayed at the control panel far longer than he should have, staring at that blank monitor. His hands twitched as if he didn't know what to do with them. Then, without warning, he slammed his fist down so hard the desk cracked. The sound wasn't cartoonish. It wasn't the playful boing of slapstick physics. It was the real, dull thud of wood splintering. The laugh track roared again, late, jagged, too loud. But it wasn't a crowd laughing anymore. It was one voice, a deep, broken chuckle, like someone in the audience had lost their mind and couldn't stop. It went on and on until Homer finally whispered, "Stop watching me." I froze. The voice wasn't his usual goofy tone. It was Dan Castellanetta's voice, but stripped bare, raw, almost pained. My throat went dry. This had to be a joke, right? A fan dub? Some dark parody? But the sync was perfect, the lip movements flawless, and that voice, God, I knew that voice. I'd heard it 1,000 times. The scene cut suddenly to the Simpsons kitchen. Marge stood at the counter, chopping vegetables. But there was no background music, no chatter. Just the scrape of the knife on the cutting board. Over and over, methodical, mechanical. Her eyes didn't blink. She didn't hum. She didn't smile. She just chopped. The camera angle lingered on the knife, longer than necessary. I found myself leaning closer, waiting, dreading, certain she was about to slip. But she didn't. She just chopped. Then she raised her head, looked directly at the camera, and said, in her gravelly voice, "Why are you here?" My whole body tensed. It was like the show knew things it couldn't know. The camera panned to Lisa, sitting at the table, staring blankly into her plate. The animation was stiff, wrong, almost uncanny in the way her head tilted slowly toward me. Then her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For a long time, it was just silence, her face frozen in an expression I couldn't read. And then she whispered something. I almost didn't catch it. The volume dropped low, lower than the ambient hum of my own computer. I had to lean close to the speakers to hear it. She said my street name. I jerked back in my chair so fast it tipped against the wall. My heart slammed against my ribs. I couldn't have heard that right. There was no way. But when I replayed it, God help me, it was there. Soft, deliberate, unmistakable. Lisa Simpson whispering the name of the street I lived on. I clutched the arm of my chair, nails digging in. Suddenly the whole room felt smaller, the glow of the monitor too bright, too invasive. My apartment didn't feel like my apartment anymore. It felt like a set piece, like someone was about to walk in with a camera. But I didn't stop watching. I couldn't. The episode continued, each moment heavier than the last. Bart finally appeared, standing in the living room doorway, silent. His chalk-stained fingers twitched at his sides. His face was pale, drained of color, as if he'd been erased and redrawn too many times. He didn't speak. He just stared at me with those empty black eyes, until Maggie's pacifier broke the silence with a hollow, distorted suck suck suck. The laugh track returned, not loud this time, but faint, distant, like a recording being played in another room. Homer appeared again, stepping into the living room. He didn't shuffle with his usual goofy gait. He dragged his feet. When he reached the couch, he stopped, turned to Marge, and said, "He's still here." Marge didn't respond. She just kept chopping, though her knife was no longer hitting vegetables. It was hitting the cutting board directly, splintering it with each strike. My skin prickled. Homer looked straight at me again. "Do you want to see it?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. But the show answered for me. The screen flickered. The family was outside now, standing in the yard. The grass was patchy, the sky an ugly brown. They were all there, Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, Maggie, but behind them was something blurred, something the animation didn't want me to see. At least, not yet. Lisa turned again, her voice clear this time. "It ends with you." I gasped so loud it hurt my throat. "Ends with me? Ends how? Ends when?" The laugh track screamed to life again, louder than ever. But I wasn't laughing. I couldn't breathe. The pacing of the episode broke down completely now. Scenes came and went without logic. The family would sit at the table, silent, staring. Then suddenly they'd be at Moe's, the bar empty, glasses shattered, Moe himself hanging from a noose in the corner. Then back home again. Time didn't flow, it fractured, replayed, skipped forward and back like a VHS tape chewed by an old machine. And all the while, the characters kept glancing at me. Not the camera. Me. Every time Homer spoke, it was slower. Every time Marge lifted her knife, it was closer to slipping. Every time Lisa whispered, it was about me. My name. My street. My job. Things they couldn't know. I wanted to close the window. I wanted to shut it down and throw my laptop across the room. But my hand wouldn't move. My eyes burned, but I couldn't blink. It was like the episode had me trapped, holding me in place with invisible strings. And then the blur in the background came into focus. It was a figure, tall, hunched, drawn in crude, heavy lines that didn't match the usual animation. It wasn't part of Springfield. It didn't belong. Its face was smeared, featureless, except for a gaping mouth that stretched wider than it should. It didn't move. It just stood there, behind the Simpsons, looming closer with each cut of the scene. Finally, Homer turned to the screen, to me, and said, "Are you ready to see how it happens?" My stomach dropped. I knew what he meant, and then I saw my own face. The Simpsons weren't just predicting, They were describing me. I didn't want to believe it. My brain scrambled to find another explanation. A coincidence, a glitch, maybe some bizarre fan edit that just happened to line up with my life. But then Homer stepped forward, his mouth hanging open for a moment too long, as if the animators had forgotten to draw the next frame. When he finally spoke, the words punched the air from my lungs. "He dies wearing that shirt." I looked down. My stomach twisted. I wasn't wearing anything remarkable, just an old black t-shirt with faded lettering from a college event I barely remembered. A shirt so worn I only put it on when I was alone, late at night, binging episodes or scrolling forums. No one could know about it. No one. Yet there it was, spoken in Homer's tired, guttural voice. I laughed. I actually laughed at first, an ugly, nervous sound I didn't recognize as mine. Because what else could I do? It was ridiculous. It had to be. But the laugh died in my throat when Homer turned his head slightly, his pupils narrowing, his voice flattening. "You're not laughing tomorrow." The living room darkened, colors bleeding into one another. Lisa slid from her chair without moving her legs, as if gravity had bent differently for her. She stood beside Homer and whispered, "He thinks it's a joke." I swallowed hard. My chest felt too tight. Bart shuffled in behind them, chalk dust staining his hands. He lifted the eraser and scrawled words across the wall, not the chalkboard, the wall. Letters jagged and trembling, like a child forcing them out under duress. It read, "Tonight, after midnight." I felt my blood run cold. My laptop clock glowed in the corner of my vision, 11:47 p.m. I slammed the spacebar, the trackpad, every key I could hit, but the episode didn't pause. The player controls wouldn't appear. The video had me locked. On screen, the Simpsons kitchen table was suddenly set with dinner. Except it wasn't food. It was pieces of me. My watch, my wallet, my cracked phone, even my chipped mug from the sink. All laid out neatly on plates, steam curling above them like they'd just been cooked. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't real." Marge finally set down her knife, the blade glistening. She turned, smiled trembling, and said, "But it is real. You brought this on yourself." Her voice wasn't cartoon Marge anymore. It was deeper, more human. I pushed my chair back so fast it screeched across the floor. My neighbors would hear, I thought. Someone would knock, someone would break the spell. But the building was silent. Too silent. On screen, Lisa spoke again. Her eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. "We're not predicting," she said. "We're remembering." I shook my head violently, muttering no, 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 but the words kept coming. Maggie's pacifier dropped from her mouth with a wet thud. She gurgled, then in a distorted adult's voice, she said my full name. My full name. I felt bile rise in my throat. I hadn't heard anyone use my full name in years. It was the way my mom used to call me when I was in trouble. The laugh track returned, warped and hollow, like someone had taped over it 100 times. But this time, in the gaps between laughs, I heard breathing. Not kin breathing. Real, labored, wet breathing. As if someone sat in the room with me. The camera cut again, no transition, just a jarring snap. Now I was looking at an animated version of my own apartment. The same chipped paint on the doorframe. The same sagging couch with stuffing poking out. Even the water stain on the ceiling, perfectly rendered. And there I was. On screen, my cartoon self sat at my desk, wearing the same black shirt, hunched over a glowing laptop. The resemblance was uncanny, sickeningly precise. They had captured not just the look of my space, but the way I slouched, the way my hands fidgeted with the edge of the keyboard that I couldn't breathe. "This isn't just a lost episode," Homer said, his voice gravel now, breaking at the edges. "It's a death sentence." The cartoon me lifted his head slowly. His eyes were hollow, sockets empty. Then blood began to pour from them, soaking the shirt, dripping down onto the keyboard. I stumbled to my feet, backing away from the screen, whispering, "It's not real, it's not real," but my voice shook. On screen, Marge leaned over cartoon me and whispered into his ear, "But it hasn't happened yet." I nearly tripped over my own chair. My pulse was so loud in my ears I could barely hear the rest. Bart appeared again, holding a sheet of notebook paper. He lifted it toward the camera. Written in heavy, uneven scrawl was an address. My address. I lunged for the power button, slamming it down, holding it, praying the screen would go black. But the episode flickered and stuttered, resisting, as though the machine itself didn't want to let me go. Finally, After what felt like forever, the display died, leaving me in suffocating darkness. For a long moment, I just stood there, chest heaving, the hum of the dead laptop loud in the silence. My eyes darted around the room, half expecting someone, or something, to step out from the shadows. But nothing moved. Nothing spoke. Slowly, shaking, I picked the laptop back up. The power button clicked, the fan word. The screen came to life, and the episode was still playing. This time it showed a street. My street. Same cracked sidewalks, same leaning lamppost, same graffiti on the dumpster at the corner. Cartoon me was walking down it. Alone. Past midnight. I glanced at the clock. 12:03 a.m. My chest seized. I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't. But the voiceover, Homer's voice, raspy, torn, cut through my panic. Don't fight it. You'll only make it worse. My vision blurred. My thoughts scattered. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to do something. But I couldn't even tell what I'd be running from. The screen glitched, the image breaking into jagged shards of color before resolving into one final frame. Cartoon me lying in the middle of the street, face down, blood pooling beneath. The family stood around the body, smiling faintly, like they'd just witnessed the punchline to a long, cruel joke. Lisa leaned down to the camera, her eyes wide, unblinking. But the worst part, she whispered, it hasn't happened yet. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or awake anymore. When I finally shut the laptop, actually yanked the power cord out of the wall just to make sure, it didn't feel like the episode had ended. It felt like it had spilled over. Into me. Into my space. Into my life. At first, it was little things. Subtle. Easy to dismiss. My mug, the chipped one I always left in the sink, wasn't there the next morning. It sat neatly on the table instead, resting on a plate like in the episode. I laughed it off, told myself I'd forgotten I'd moved it. But my laugh was hollow, shaking, and I didn't believe it. When I checked my phone, it buzzed with a notification. A text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. You're not laughing. That was the line Homer had said. My chest tightened. I deleted it instantly, like erasing it would undo the weight of it. But the words stayed with me all day, whispering at the edges of my thoughts. By afternoon, things got worse. At the corner store, the cashier, who I'd seen 100 times, who never said more than plastic or paper, looked me dead in the eye and muttered, after midnight. Same cadence, same tone as Bart. I froze, groceries trembling in my hands. What did you just say? I asked. The man blinked, cleared his throat. Do you want a bag? My stomach dropped. I shoved the cash at him and walked out without answering. Everywhere I went, the episode followed. At work, my coworker Lisa, yeah, her real name was Lisa, leaned over my cubicle and whispered, he thinks it's a joke. She smiled like she thought it was funny, like she didn't realize what she'd just said. I snapped my head up so fast she jumped. What did you say? I said. She started, but stopped. Her brow furrowed. Wait, I don't know what I just said. I left early that day. Walking home, the streetlights flickered in sequence, left to right, as though marking my path. My earbuds buzzed with static, then a voice hissed through them. Marge's voice, clear as day. You brought this on yourself. I ripped them out, heart hammering, but the voice still echoed in my head long after the silence closed in. That night, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I shouldn't have picked up, but dread pulled me in. I lifted the receiver and froze. It was the laugh track. Canned, empty, looping. And underneath it, faint but sharp, Homer's voice. He dies wearing that shirt. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the floor, still buzzing with laughter. Sleep didn't come easy, and when it did, it wasn't sleep at all. My dreams were yellow, saturated with distorted faces, wide eyes, jagged mouths. They whispered lines from the show, lines I hadn't heard yet, like spoilers for a season I never wanted to watch. When I woke up, drenched in sweat, the clock read 3 a.m. But the chalkboard in my dreams still burned in my mind, tonight. After midnight, it wasn't just the objects. It wasn't just the people. It was me too. I caught myself humming the theme song without realizing it. At work, I doodled characters in the margins of my notes, their eyes black pits, their mouths stretched too wide. I didn't remember drawing them. Every reflection looked wrong, off. My bathroom mirror showed my shirt logo reversed, but not in the normal mirrored way, backward, illegible, like a smear. The screen of my phone showed my face lagging half a second behind my movements, eyes not quite aligned. I tried to tell myself I was tired, paranoid, stressed out. But then I walked past a TV in a store window, and every screen, dozens of them, switched to the same image, cartoon me, sitting at my desk, waiting. My knees nearly buckled. I stumbled into the street, ignoring the car horn that screamed past. I wasn't safe anywhere. Not awake, not asleep. Everywhere I went, the episode followed, and the deadline drew closer. I thought maybe I could fight it, that if I just got rid of the file, wiped it from existence, the nightmare would end. So I tried. First, I deleted the episode, dragged it into the trash, emptied the bin, even ran a wipe program that was supposed to make files unrecoverable. When it was done, I leaned back, breathing hard, as though I'd physically battled the thing. But when I reopened my laptop, the file was still there. Same name, goodbye.mkv. Same date, 2012. I tried again. This time I deleted the entire folder it sat in, then the drive partition itself. Reformatted everything. Hours of progress bars and restarts. When my desktop blinked back on, the first icon staring at me was that file, sitting in the middle of the screen like it belonged there. I slammed the lid shut. My hands shook. Next, I tried the old ways, primitive, desperate. I dug out a hammer from the closet and brought it down on the laptop. Keys snapped, plastic splintered, screen cracked into spiderweb glass. I kept hitting it until the fan whined and died, until the machine was nothing but a mangled carcass. I stood over it, panting, knuckles raw. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of relief, until my phone buzzed. A notification lit the screen. You can't break what isn't yours. Attached was a video. I didn't want to play it, but my thumb twitched. The clip opened with static, then cleared. It was me, hunched over the shattered remains of my laptop. Same shirt, same room, the exact moment I'd just lived. And then, from the background of the video, I heard Marge's voice. "Nice try, homie," followed by laughter. I dropped the phone. That's when I realized I wasn't the first. Late into the night, I scoured forums, message boards, forgotten archives, searching for anything about goodbye.mkv. Most threads were empty. Posts would vanish while I scrolled, blinking out line by line as though someone was erasing them in real time. But on one buried subreddit, I found fragments. People whispering about the tape. Some called it the lost episode, others called it the prophecy file. No screenshots, no downloads. Just warnings. Don't finish the episode. Turn it off before the end. If you see your name, it's already too late. And one final post, left by a user whose account was deleted the same day. There were others before me. None of them are alive now. My throat went dry. I slammed the laptop shut, even though I knew it didn't matter. The words burned in my skull. Because if the episode had been around since 2012, that meant people had been finding it for years. And every one of them erased. The walls seemed to breathe around me. The air buzzed with static. I felt like if I reached out, I could peel reality back like a sticker, and behind it would only be yellow faces staring. The episode wasn't gone. It was never gone. It was waiting. The last scene was waiting for me. I tried to resist. I told myself I wouldn't watch the rest, that I wouldn't give it the satisfaction. But resistance is useless when the episode wants to be seen. That night, my laptop powered on by itself. The cracked screen glowed, fractured light bleeding into the dark room. My stomach turned when I saw it. Goodbye.mkv, already playing. No controls, no escape. The scene was my street again. Midnight black sky hanging over the crooked lamppost. Cartoon me stumbled into frame, moving with that jerky, uncanny animation, like the animators had skipped half the drawings that I recognized every detail. The dumpsters, the graffiti, even the way the pavement dipped near the corner. I whispered, "No," but the sound was swallowed by canned laughter, low and mechanical, looping over itself. Cartoon me looked up. His eyes were wide, hollow. He mouthed words, but no sound came. Then, slowly, he stepped into the middle of the street. That's when headlights appeared. The glow filled the screen, bright and violent. I felt it against my skin, like the light was pouring out of the laptop into the room. Cartoon me froze, arms lifting as if to shield himself. The car hit. The impact wasn't cartoonish at all. It was real. Bones snapped with sickening cracks, blood spraying in arcs far too detailed for animation. The body bounced, twisted, crumpled against the pavement. A smear of red trailed across the street, painted frame by frame with grotesque precision. And then came the laughter. Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, Maggie, they stepped into frame, silhouettes against the headlights. Their mouths stretched impossibly wide, eyes bulging with glee as they laughed and clapped. The laugh track blended with them until it was one endless, inhuman roar. Marge wiped a tear from her eye, giggling. Classic. Bart doubled over, slapping his knee, his voice warping into something deeper. Best one yet. Lisa crouched beside my broken body, tilting her head. She smiled faintly, then whispered, "See? It wasn't a joke." The camera zoomed in on Cartoomy's face. Blood pooled around it, mouth frozen open in a silent scream. The details were unbearable. My chipped tooth, the mole near my jaw, even the exact way my hair stuck out. It wasn't just an animation. It was me. I felt my stomach lurch. My chest tightened until I thought I'd suffocate. On screen, the family gathered closer, their shadows stretching long and jagged. Homer leaned down, whispering in that gravelly voice, "This is your punchline." The image flickered, and suddenly, my real reflection stared back at me through the fractured glass of the laptop screen. For a moment, I couldn't tell which was which, me or the cartoon corpse. The laugh track swelled, rattling the walls. And then, just as suddenly, silence. The screen froze on my bloodied face. Words scrawled across the bottom in chalky white letters. "T.O.B. continued." I slammed the laptop shut, my breath ragged, but it didn't matter. The image was burned into me. I don't know what's worse, that it showed me, or that they laughed. And now, I'm waiting for it to come true. If you're still watching, I need you to listen carefully. This isn't just a story. It isn't just some creepypasta you can laugh off and forget when the lights go out. I've shown you what I've seen. I've told you what's waiting at the end. And now, I don't know how much time I have left. If this video ends suddenly, if my voice cuts off, or if the screen glitches, you'll know why. I need you to promise me something. Don't search for it. Don't try to find the episode. You think you're curious, that you can handle it. That's what I thought too. But it doesn't work like that. If you go looking for it, it'll find you first. I keep asking myself if there are others out there, others like me. Maybe you've seen fragments. Maybe you've heard the laughter. If you have, I need you to tell me. Leave a comment. Share what you know. Because if this thing is bigger than me, if there are other tapes, then maybe together we can piece it together before it's too late. But I don't think we have much time. Wait, do you hear that? That sound. TV static. It's here again. If I don't upload another video, the audio crackles, fizzles into static, then cuts.